flexible response. After World War II, the United States entered a period known as the Cold War. A lot happened during this period, including the creation of the hydrogen bomb, the space race, and most importantly, the arms race. The United States, as well as Soviet Russia, began stockpiling nuclear weapons. Billions of dollars were invested in developing and producing these weapons of mass destruction. Between 1945 and 1990, more than 70,000 total warheads were developed in the United States in over 65 different varieties, costing at least $8.5 trillion in present-day terms. The United States also developed and enhanced various methods of delivering these warheads, mainly intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and strategic bombers. They all had their pros and cons, but the primary benefit of these tactics was their versatility. The sufficient amount of nuclear warheads and effective methods of delivering them were important to the United States' deterrence theory. According to this theory, as long as the U.S. could inflict unacceptable damage to any belligerent who initiates the first strike, said belligerent would be deterred or discouraged from taking such action. Defense Secretary Robert McNamara defined unacceptable damage as the destruction of 25% of the population and 50% of industry. So the United States seemed to be in a good position, right? Well, not exactly. Laos, freed from French colonization in 1954, was dangerously close to falling under communist control. During Laos's civil war, President Kennedy considered sending in American troops, but realized that he had insufficient forces to calm the communists in Laos and still honor his commitments in Europe. So with the support of McNamara, President Kennedy decided to shift military spending from nuclear weapons to conventional units. Our defense posture must be both flexible and determined, our response selective, permitting deliberation and discrimination as to timing, scope, and targets. John F. Kennedy, March 28, 1961. JFK wanted to avoid nuclear warfare if possible, so he devised a simple three-stage counter-strategy to any conventional Soviet military action, meaning any sort of non-nuclear offensive: direct defense, deliberate escalation, and general nuclear response. Using a hypothetical Soviet invasion of West Berlin, this is how President Kennedy's strategy would work. Direct defense. Initial efforts would be to try to stop Soviet advancement with conventional methods. If NATO troops failed in halting Soviet advancement, which would be highly likely in this situation, they would move to the next stage: deliberate escalation. NATO forces would switch to limited use of nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons such as gravity bombs, artillery shells, and landmines. The last and least ideal stage is general nuclear response. In this stage, NATO forces would resort to strategic nuclear weapons, which would provoke Soviet forces to do the same. This is all assuming that Soviet forces would not take the quote-unquote first strike, but if they had, NATO forces would move to an all-out nuclear war stage quicker. Part of the flexible response was to bolster conventional forces in an attempt to avoid the second and third stages of this strategy. If that could be accomplished, nuclear war could be avoided altogether. So how did President Kennedy bolster his conventional units? Simply put, he increased military spending. Straying from the Eisenhower administration's philosophy of getting more bang for the buck, President Kennedy sent more money towards developing conventional weapons and recruitment rather than nuclear research and development. Army strength alone rose from 860,000 to 1,060,000 in 1961, accompanied by similar gains in Navy and Air Force. Kennedy also bolstered the Special Forces, also known as the Green Berets for their unique headgear. These elite anti-guerrilla units are responsible for unconventional warfare, foreign internal defense, special reconnaissance, direct action, counter-terrorism, combat search and rescue, counter-narcotics, counter-proliferation, hostage rescue, humanitarian assistance, information operations, peacekeeping, psychological operations, security assistance, and manhunts. When you put all these things together, you basically get the flexible response.